Hey everyone, my name's Adam from AM Music. I'm a music producer that composes mainly for TV, Sky Sports, Channel 4. I've also had many of my tracks signed, mainly to BMG Production Music, and I teach music production online. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to make a drum beat in Logic Pro. In fact, we're going to look at 10 drum beats in Logic Pro. And they're all from different styles, different genres, so that I can help you expand your drum vocabulary. So first off, I'm talking about drum beats. Not the modern beats, which basically means instrumentals. You don't know, drums change a lot depending on the genre. Pretty much every different genre has a different drum beat. Like a metal track will have maybe like a blast beat, double pedal thing going on, but you would never find that in jazz. So what genres are we going to have a look at? We are going to have a look at EDM, rock, D&B, drum and bass, trap, disco, dubstep, dubstep's still a thing, punk, metal, and bossa nova. Anyway, let's jump into it. So we're going to look at those 10 different genres, and I'm going to try and use a few different methods in the process of showing those 10 different genres. I'm mostly going to program them so you get the feel. So number one, EDM or house. From a drumming perspective, this is quite simple. So I'm going to load up electronic drum kit. I'm going to go to above and beyond, let's just say for this one. And I'm going to go to the piano roll and the step sequencer, because this is the quickest and easiest way to get drums in Logic Pro. Just click, turn it on. And tempo is important here, so drums for EDM, probably 124 to 132-ish. So there's the kick, the 4 to the floor. I prefer that one. And if you're thinking, oh, it sounds a bit pants, it doesn't sound loud enough, it doesn't sound full enough, you'll notice we're actually only at -12, -13 there. So if you do want to turn it up and make it a bit louder, you can come into the drum machine designer over here, find the kick, and you can boost the volume there. And if you come to the cue sample over here, you can also boost that up too. So main elements of a drum kit or a drum pattern are always the kick drum and the snare. You've also got hi-hats and ride cymbals or any other cymbals. So the sounds matter as well. So the kicks in house music, they're going to be a bit deeper, a bit fuller, more obviously electronic sounding rather than acoustic kit sounding. Yeah, so I'm happy with this one here. So for snares, yes, you could use snares. You're also going to use claps quite often, or you can layer the two. So I've got a snare and a clap there. So kicks on the quarter note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 quarter notes. Claps on the 2 and the 4, because that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4 in the bar. Basic pattern for a house track, an EDM track. And then quite often you'll have hi-hats on the offbeat as well, and they're normally open. Don't really like that sound too much. So that, in its fundamental sense, is what a house beat sounds like. Can also add some more claps. Can add 1/8 notes onto the hat. Like that. And maybe I want to change the sound entirely. Let's go big room. And then what they do to take this further is add layers, maybe some loops, but you could add some shakers, you might need a percussion layer on top of that, like a kind of thing with a shaker or tambourine. That's the foundation anyway. Kind of like a dead mouse, or I don't know, any big room kind of 4 to the floor pounding house, almost techno kind of sound. Okay, number 2, something completely different. Let's go for rock now. You could go to the drummer, but we are going to program it. So we're going to go software instrument, and I'm going to this time load up a drum kit. Let's go to the top one. Let's go different, let's go Brooklyn. And I've got a MIDI keyboard connected, And what I'm going to do is just record in a beat, very simple. Something like that. So with rock, very basically, let's have a look at the MIDI here. Just quantized it just for demonstration. You're going to have your kick on 1 pretty much always, and then you're going to have your snare on the 3rd beat. But we're in 8th, we've got 8th notes going here, so rather than quarter notes before, now we're looking at 8th notes. We've got 1, 2, 3, and that's where the snare is going to come. Get rid of that for now. So the 3 main elements of a beat: kick drum, snare, and hi-hats, or it could be rides. And then what you can do is you can play, generally that snare is going to be on that downbeat. So if that's downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, upbeat, downbeat, upbeat. So it's, if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, it's on the 3rd, the snare is on the 3rd, 1, 2, 3, 4, and kicks are on the 1 at its most basic. But what you can start to do, and as a drummer you'll start to get a bit more fancy with your kick drums. You might do a ba-bum-bum. Sure you've heard that, or maybe put one in here. And that's kind of more like a rock beat, right? And if you want to get a bit heavier, maybe say in a chorus, you might move from a closed hi-hat, you might go over to like a crash cymbal and ride out on the crash. That might be too strong. That kind of thing, and I could loop it obviously. And that would be your basic rock kind of beat. And then you can start to think about adding little ghost notes, which would be kind of like quieter snare hits. So let's take a snare. So let's do that. And if I make the velocity a lot quieter, you start to get kind of like a little rolliness to it. That, and these quite often go in 16ths. So let me just explain that as well. So if I've got 1 bar here, it can be subdivided into quarter notes, 8th notes, 16th notes, 32 notes. In 1 bar from 1 to 2, you've got the first note, quarters would be 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be all your quarters. 8th notes would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then 16ths would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So when we say a 16th, we more likely mean one of these ones. If we say it's on an 8, it's more likely to be on one of these ones. We also call that the offbeat because it's between the main quarter beat, and you've got the quarter beats, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're often 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. Hopefully that made sense. So number 3, we're going to look at drum and bass. We're going to have to go a lot faster for that, up about 174 or 175. So a lot of drum and bass came out of the song called Amen Brother by the Winstons, and it became known as the Amen break. It's the one that goes. So it's that. It was originally slower, but it got sped up. I think I have it there. So funky break. So let's have a look at building that. So let's do the same again. Let's create a new drum kit. Let's go for a soul-y kind of one. So neo soul, that will do it. So what you could hear in that Amen was some rolling as well, like the ghost notes that we talked about in the previous one. This is how I often work. I often put in the kicks and the snare pattern and then fill in the rest. So So that's it at its most basic. Let's quantize that. Move that over. Okay, so we want the ghost note, which falls here. Let's make it a bit ghosty. There we go, just see that a bit better. So that is it, not bang on, but that's kind of the kick snare pattern. And then we've got rides in this one. So let's find some rides. Okay, so that's fairly similar, but you can play with it, add some extra kick drums. And you can add some variations to the ride, like using the ride cymbal bell. And you start to get a bit more groove. And when you want to get a bit more realism as well, you can add in velocities, so you can make stuff a little bit louder and add some variation like this. And that's going to make it just seem more like a real drummer, because they're not a drum machine, they play at different velocities. Simplified version, that is drum and bass, an amen break. Sometimes called a roller because it rolls along quite nicely. Okay, so let's jump into number 4, trap drums. So let's go to 808 drum kit, 808 flex on the drum kit. Let's go over to the step sequencer again. So quite often you have a dun 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 da da dun 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 da kind of thing in trap stuff. So another big component of the trap is 808 sounds. So they're the kind of really deep, boomy, sub-bassy, sub-kicky kind of sounds. So something like that. Bit fast, and quite often the snare will be half time almost, so rather than something like this, it's more often something like that, and then you'd have hi-hats pretty much like that. Quite often using 16th notes or even 32 notes. So something like that for a trap beat. Often a snappy kind of clap. I kind of want to make these into 32s at the end, but I Well, I guess I could just do this. So if I now convert to MIDI region. So I've got hats there. Let's make them double time. That kind of zzz sound became ubiquitous with the trap sound. So something like that for trap. I'm not a huge trap fan, so it's not something I make a lot of, but this is kind of the fundamentals, I would say. Okay, so let's move on. Number 5, let's do some jazz. Ooh, that's going to be quite a departure. So I'm going to go for a real kit again, and a big feature of jazz drums are the swing, is the swung kind of feel, swing swung. Let's go to soul again. So a lot of jazz is on the ride, and you get that ding, 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 ding. And something fairly unique to jazz is the hi-hat foot is going pretty much constantly. That's kind of providing your rhythm compared to, like, say, house, which is 4 on the floor kick drum. This is more like 2 in the 4 in the hi-hat foot. So that kind of thing, but let's record something in. The jazz is a bit more unique in that the kick drum isn't always going to appear on the 1, whereas it does pretty much always in EDM, always does pretty much in trap, always does pretty much in rock music. 3, 4. So something like that. Let's just quantize it real quick. I'm not going to quantize this actually, I'm just going to drag it back to roughly where it starts, because I've got a fair amount of shuffle. So the shuffle is this kind of note, the push note here. So but jazz is a bit more free-flowing, there's a lot more movement, it's less structural. And you'll often get a lot of accents, so you'll often get a lot of ghost notes again as well. So you might have a, make that nice and quiet. Maybe not so frequent. Let's just put a kick on the first one, though it doesn't have to. And I could tighten that up a little bit, obviously, but jazz is going to move a little bit, it is a bit more free. Just move that along a bit. I'm just going to tighten this up manually. So yeah, jazz, ride cymbal, very important, ding, 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 kind of thing. Kick drum on the 1, but it's often quite feathered, it's often quite light as well. It's not like a boom, it's a boom. And the snare, it's going to come and go, but often be on the 2 or the 4 beat. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4 is how I'd count it. That's most basic on the ride. 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and is how I count the ride cymbal for that. So let's get rid of that one. It's a bit. But you need to swing it. So 1, 2, and not 1, 2, and 3. It's 1, 2, and. So that kind of thing. Okay, so let's go into number 6, disco. Disco, very similar to the big room house, but let's go with a normal drum kit. Okay, so disco. So as I said, so hi-hat open is going to happen on the offbeat. That's it at its most simplest, where you play eighths rather than quarters. So you'd have close hi-hat, open hi-hat, closed hi-hat, open hi-hat. And then we can add some extra kick drums in and some fills and make that a bit more exciting. But let's just program that. Okay, so I missed my kick drum off. Sometimes if it looks like you missed it, you can just drag that back and it will appear. So I'm going to quantize this to eighth notes. Okay, and then that's your very most basic disco beat. And maybe you want to add in like a boom 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 scat boom boom. Let's go there. Let's not do that one there. Let's move that over there. Do that. Something like that. And that's basically disco, really. Might then have a da-da-da-da. So drum fill. Da-da-da-da. And that is disco. See how house or EDM has a lot of its roots in disco. Okay, so next we are going to do some dubstep, if anyone's still listening to dubstep. I really love the groove in dubstep. Some of the sound design got a bit ridiculous for my taste in the end, but so let's program some dubstep in. Let's go for an electronic drum kit. Let's go for... kind of like a 12/8 feel. It's kind of got that halftime shuffly kind of swung kind of laid back groove. So that's we can add some more interesting kick drum patterns. See, that's why we don't always quantize, because it goes badly. So kicks on the one, snare. So when I said it's got a half-time feel, that's because the kicks on the one, the snare's on halfway through the bar. Boom, so let's move them all to the half beat. And I could just do that, select these and go half note. We want to go a bit faster as well. I didn't change the tempos recently, but let's go up to 140. Sounds enough. Okay, so that's just a 2-bar thing. I'm going to add a boom, a kind of a push. So something like that. Maybe you throw in some open hi-hats as well, like you would have a slower kind of almost shuffly kind of feel. And I could emphasize that, so I could take my hi-hats. In fact, actually, so if I put it to 16th note and then swing it a little bit, it's not going to do anything. If I get it to 8th note and swing it a little bit, let's go 50, let's say. And then you get that swung feel. I don't quite like that as much, but you can really push it. If you go a bit less. I like that. It's a bit more subtle. You can't even really hear it, but it's just adding to that kind of motion. And that is dubstep. And obviously with that, the sound design becomes a huge part of that, but I'm kind of just showing the structure of the groove more here. Because yeah, we could go into layering up loads of samples, and we could, I kind of went with the first sounds that I went with, but yeah, you could, but the sound design is kind of important, and you're going to really try and get really heavy kick drums and really heavy kind of snare drums, that a lot of reverb generally on that snare drum as well. So that would be dubstep. Okay, moving on from number 7, let's go to number 8. Let's look at punk rock. So we're going to go for a natural sounding drum kit. And this is quite simple. So punk is kind of like boom, gap, gap, boom, gap, gap, boom, gap, gap. That's kind of the punk sound. So let's go to drum kit. Let's find a heavier one. Yeah, like that. It's quite raw. It's quite often they'll have hi-hat open. Not always. It could just be hi-hat closed, but for it's kind of raw and heavy. So that's kind of your punk kind of groove. So let's start with that. Let's get my kick drum back. Went a little early, let's move it along. And you can hold control just to move it along in smaller increments. That's going to be terrible, but let's just quantize that. Okay, not far out. So yeah, that will do. That's kind of a punk rhythm. The snare on the second beat and the fourth beat, if we're talking eighth notes. And often the second kick drum is a double, so it's... That one should be there, but doesn't have to be. You can do anything you like, but that kind of the boom ba 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 is the kind of punk sound. And we can go heavier, of course. We can go... And if they're going to be heavy, they might as well be heavy too. And that is your classic punk sound. That was number 8. Let's move on to number 9. And we're going to go to metal for this. Something I don't listen to too much anymore. I did a little bit in my teenage years. So for me, metal is all about the double kick drum pedal. In metal, you hear it a lot. So quite often the kick drum's doing the fast thing, the kind of thing, 16 notes maybe on the kick drum, and you might have a more of a half time kind of thing on the hi-hat, probably hi-hat open as well, like a with kick drum. That was kick drums, by the way. So let's just go for it. Let's stick with heavy, because there's not great metal drums in Logic. Let me see if there's anything I can think of. Okay, let's go with this one for now. Let's go for Smash. One thing as well, metal over the years has become a lot more, there's been a lot more drum triggers involved in the production. So they'll record it and then they'll do drum replacement afterwards. So they might use even more punchier kind of samples. So they'll often do sample replacement where they'll take some really well recorded kick drum samples, and it can sometimes sound a bit more machine gunny kind of processed, but that's kind of the sound that metal's gone in recent years. But we're here to talk about the beats, so this is the kind of metal beat you might do. I can't play it fast enough on the keyboard, so I'm just going to get something in and then I'm going to edit it, okay? So, eighth notes. Let's just fix some of that. Just fill in those where I couldn't play them. So once again, half time fill on the snare. Snare's coming on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So halfway through, half time. And the cymbals are also doing half notes. And a 2 in a bar. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Doesn't have to be that way. You could quite just easily duplicate it and go, which also works. But quite often on the breakdown, the metal breakdown, there's quite often that kind of really slow hi-hat. And then for the kick drums, we want to make them a bit more powerful, and we're going to go double pedal kind of kick drums. So rather than 1/8 notes here, we're going to go 16, and I'm just going to duplicate that and make them a little bit quieter, and now bring them all up together. So let's have a look at that. So yeah, that one wrong there, but I quite like that early note, so let's just for interest's sake do that. That could also be on the crash, of course. But yeah, the double pedal kick drum, big factor, the half-time snare. It could also be a blast beat as well, which is kind of like like kind of similar to the punk rhythm. If I do that and do that. Even more, go there and there. So that's more of your blast beat kind of metal drum beat. Not something I do a lot of, but that's how I would program them. And let's end on something completely different. Let's end on some Latin. Let's end on some Bossa Nova. So this is kind of close to the jazz field again, Latin jazz kind of crossover a bit more. From Brazil. Yeah, so I want a kind of soulful drum kit again. Motown revisited. Ride cymbal, predominantly. 16 notes. Softly played. And you're going to use the, there you go, the side stick and kick drum. So something like that is the groove for a Bossa Nova. It's been a while since I played one. Okay, so that is kind of how it goes. I didn't put in any kick drums there because it's too hard to play. But yeah, so that's kind of the groove. Let's just quantize it a second. So that's the snare pattern, or the side stick, and the ride. So now we need some kicks. And it's like a boom. That, 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 that. Where are we at? Okay, that's something like that. Okay, cool. So this is one of the reasons I love playing jazz and Latin styles, is because it's really confusing. So notice the complexity in that pattern compared to, say, a house drum beat. For me, this is a lot more interesting, and also you'd normally have a foot note on every quarter as well, a hi-hat foot. Think like that, or is it the offbeat? I think it's on every starting quarter for the hi-hat foot. So that would be a Bossa Nova kind of feel. And any Brazilians, I'm sorry if I've butchered that. It's been a long time since I've played Bossa Nova on drums. Okay, so there you have it, 10 drum grooves that you know, and that way you can kind of mix stuff up. Anyway, I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you on the next video. And if you're interested in learning more about creating music in Logic Pro, head to my website, ammusic.co.uk, link in the description, and I've got a load of different courses there, including specific ones for EDM and rock, as well as a general Logic Pro one called Logic Pro Essentials, which is coming up to the end of its sale. If you like this video, let me know in the comments, like, subscribe. I'll see you next week. Take care.